All right, so you sent over this construction handbook,
Yeah.
and we're going to dive into it. I was
Mhm.
looking through it earlier.
Yeah.
It looks like it's really for,
Mm.
I mean, professionals could definitely use it, but it's
Right.
also good for
Yeah.
like an amateur who's interested in like
Absolutely.
really understanding how buildings are put together.
Yeah. It's for anyone who wants to know more about, building construction from the ground up.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is like
Yeah.
it's the whole 9 yards, building regulations, materials,
Mm.
uh,
Yeah.
tools, techniques,
Hmm.
the challenges.
Yeah, and it's pretty interesting. It talks a lot about maintaining existing
Oh,
buildings,
really?
which I thought was fascinating.
Sure.
Because in the UK, there's something like 25 million dwellings,
Wow.
and keeping those in good shape is a huge part of the construction industry.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just about building new stuff. It's also taking care of what's already there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's start with some of the basics.
Sure.
One of the things they talk about in here is the external envelope of a building.
Mm-hmm.
So for those of us
Yeah.
who are not architects, what is that?
Well, it's basically the outer shell of the building.
Okay.
So it's everything that separates the inside from the outside world: walls, roof, windows, doors, you name it.
Okay.
And it's fascinating because the external envelope can be both structural and non-structural.
So structural meaning it holds the building up.
Exactly, it's load-bearing.
Okay.
But then there are also parts that are non-structural. They serve more as a protective layer.
So like thinking about a traditional brick house,
Mm-hmm.
the walls would be part of the external envelope,
Yes.
and they're also load-bearing.
Right.
But in something like a skyscraper, that glass facade,
Yes.
that might just be kind of like a curtain wall.
Exactly. Curtain wall is just hanging there.
Yeah.
And the handbook gets into, how the function of the external envelope dictates the materials and techniques that are used. Whether it's weather protection, temperature regulation, noise control, fire safety, it's all tied in.
Wow. So it's a lot more than just the outside.
It is. It's a complex system.
Yeah.
It has to perform a lot of different functions. It's
Yeah.
not just about looks.
And this handbook also differentiates between dwellings and flats.
Right.
Why is that?
Well, it mainly comes down to differences in building regulations.
Okay.
Flats usually have stricter fire safety requirements.
That makes sense.
Yeah, because if there's a fire in one unit, it can affect so many others.
Right, right.
So yeah, there are specific regulations depending on the type of building.
So whether you're building a detached house
Mm-hmm.
or a high-rise apartment block, you gotta,
You have to know the rules.
yeah, know the rules.
Yeah.
And speaking of making things clear, this handbook talks a lot about different types of drawings,
Yes.
like elevations and sections, component drawings.
Right.
For someone who's like trying to make sense of plans,
Right.
which one should I really be focusing on?
Well, all the drawings are important.
Okay.
But for a homeowner, I'd say focus on the section drawings, or like a vertical slice through the building.
Okay.
So they show you how everything is layered and connected: the foundation, walls, roof, insulation.
So you really see how,
You get a sense of how the building is put together.
yeah, you get to see like inside the building,
Exactly.
not just like the outside.
Yeah, it's like getting a peek behind the curtain.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, this handbook also dives into a bunch of regulations and legalities.
Mm.
One thing that caught my eye was the Home Information Pack, the HIP.
Yeah.
Isn't that like a stack of documents you get when you're buying a property?
It is.
Yeah.
It's designed to give potential buyers a comprehensive overview of the property. You get legal documents, title deeds, and this is where it gets interesting: an energy performance certificate, also known as an EPC, and a survey report.
So the HIP can actually reveal potential problems.
Oh, absolutely.
Like if the property has like a leaky roof or dodgy wiring.
Oh, exactly.
Okay.
That survey report can be invaluable. It covers everything from the roof to the plumbing, electrical systems, floors, even the structural integrity of the building.
So don't skip the survey.
Don't skip the survey.
All right.
It can save you a lot of headaches down the road.
Good advice.
Yeah.
Now, the EPC, I think most people have heard of that
Mm-hmm.
because energy efficiency is kind of a big deal these days.
It is, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
The EPC gives the property a rating from A to G.
Okay.
A being the most energy efficient.
Okay.
It tells you how much energy the building uses, how much it'll likely cost to heat and power,
Right.
and its carbon footprint. So in today's world, that information can be a deal breaker for many buyers.
Absolutely. So the HIP can actually impact the value of a property.
It can.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Moving on from the legal stuff, this handbook also delves into something called imposed loads on buildings.
Yes.
So what is that, like a monster truck parked on the roof?
Not quite. It's more about the everyday forces that act on a building.
Okay.
Imposed loads are anything that's added after construction.
Okay.
So think people, furniture, appliances, even snow on the roof.
Okay, so making sure the house full of furniture
Exactly.
and people won't suddenly come crashing down.
Exactly. The book actually references British Standard BS 6399, which sets guidelines for how buildings should be designed to withstand these loads.
Okay, and they mentioned UDL and concentrated loads.
Yes.
And I have to admit, those terms are
Yes.
taking me back to physics class.
Corey, it's not as complicated as it sounds.
Okay.
Think of UDL, or uniformly distributed load, as the weight spread evenly across a surface, like a floor supporting a bunch of people at a party.
Okay, so a crowded room.
Exactly. And then concentrated loads are focused on a single point, like a heavy piano in a corner.
Okay, a crowded room versus a grand piano.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Now we're venturing into the realm of planning and building control,
Right.
which I think a lot of people find to be
Oh, absolutely.
like a bureaucratic maze.
It can be.
Yeah, so what's the big picture here?
Well, it's about ensuring that buildings are safe, meet certain standards,
Okay.
and fit within the local environment.
Okay.
And it all starts with understanding the relevant regulations.
Mm-hmm.
So this handbook mentions the Town and Country Amenities Act of 1974,
Okay.
which was a landmark piece of legislation in the UK.
What did that change?
It gave local authorities more power to control development and protect existing structures.
Okay.
So, for example, they could prevent the demolition of a historically significant building,
Oh, okay.
or even the felling of protected trees.
So you can't just bulldoze a historic building
Not anymore, no.
to make way for a new development.
Exactly. There's a process in place now
Okay.
to ensure that these things are protected.
So what about the actual planning process?
Well, the handbook outlines the steps involved in an outline planning application.
Okay.
You need a description of the proposed work, site plans showing the location and layout, and sometimes even environmental impact assessments.
Okay, so you have to be mindful of your surroundings.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
can't just plop a building down wherever you want.
Not at all. It has to fit in with the existing landscape,
Okay.
both physically and aesthetically.
Right. And then this handbook also mentions construction regulations,
Yes,
which I assume are all about safety on building sites.
exactly. Those stem from the Health and Safety at Work, etc. Act of 1974.
Okay.
They set the minimum legal requirements for construction work,
Okay.
really focusing on the safety and welfare of workers.
So hard hats and safety boots and all that stuff.
That's part of it, but it's much broader than that.
Okay.
Think scaffolding safety, handling hazardous materials,
Oh.
proper training, risk assessments.
So it's like a whole framework.
It is a whole framework to prevent accidents
Gotcha.
and create a safe working environment.
Okay. And then there are CDM regulations.
Yes, construction design and management regulations.
All right. So what's the difference between those and the general construction regulations?
CDM regulations are all about integrating health and safety into every stage of a project, right from the design phase.
Oh, so preventing accidents
Exactly, before they even have a chance to happen.
before they even happen.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's about identifying potential hazards early on and putting measures in place to mitigate those risks.
Okay. And then we have building control,
Mm-hmm.
which I imagine is the system for making sure buildings comply with all those regulations we've been talking about.
You got it.
Yeah.
It's basically the process of getting approval for your building plans and then having the construction inspected
Okay.
to make sure everything is up to code.
So you can't just start building whatever you want, however you want.
No, someone's checking to make sure you're following the rules.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they mentioned two main systems, building notice and depositive plans.
Right.
So what's the difference?
Building notice is the simpler of the two. You submit a notice with basic plans and details to the local authority,
Okay.
and you can often start work pretty quickly.
So less paperwork.
Yes, it's typically used for smaller, less complex projects like extensions or renovations.
Okay, but there must be some downsides.
Of course, building notice has limitations.
Okay.
You can't use it for larger buildings or projects that fall under certain categories.
Oh, yeah.
For those, you need to go the depositive plans route,
Which involves?
submitting detailed plans and specifications to the local authority
Mhm.
and waiting for their approval before you can start any work.
Okay.
It's a more rigorous process,
Yeah.
but it's necessary for larger, more complex projects.
Yeah, it's all about making sure that
I
the
know.
construction is safe and
It is.
it's done right.
Yeah.
Okay, what about this Section 36 notice I see in here?
Ah, that's a tool that local authorities have to stop building work.
Oh. Yeah.
If they have concerns, for example, if they think the work doesn't comply with building regulations
Oh,
or it
God.
poses a safety risk.
So it's a way to protect the public and
Exactly.
make sure the builders are held accountable.
It is.
All right, now you have the green light from building control.
Mm-hmm.
The handbook talks about what actually constitutes building work,
Right.
because not every little DIY project requires approval.
Exactly.
So how do you know what needs approval and what doesn't?
It's not always straightforward, but generally anything that affects the structure of the building,
Okay.
like adding a new room or knocking down a wall,
Okay.
that requires approval. Cosmetic changes like painting or redecorating
Okay.
usually don't.
So repainting your living room is fine,
You're good to go.
but knocking down a wall to create an open-plan kitchen?
Yeah, you'll need the official stamp of approval for that.
Mm-hmm. All right, and what about sound insulation testing?
That's particularly relevant for multi-unit dwellings
Yes.
to make sure that the sound transmission between units meets building regulations standards.
Right, because nobody wants to.
Nobody wants to hear their neighbors' every conversation.
Right, or every footstep.
Exactly.
Right, well, that's a lot of information
Yeah, we've covered a lot.
about the regulations and legalities.
Absolutely.
Now, let's talk materials.
Sure.
The handbook mentions something called the harmonization of technical specifications for building materials.
Yes.
What is
Yeah.
that all about?
It's about creating a level playing field for manufacturers across Europe.
Okay.
The book mentions CEN, the European Committee for Standardization, and ETAs, which are European technical approvals.
Okay.
These organizations set common standards for building products
Okay.
to ensure compatibility and consistent quality.
So, like a brick made in Spain
Mm-hmm.
should theoretically meet the same standards as a brick made in the UK?
In theory, yes.
Okay.
The goal is to have materials that meet certain performance and safety standards, regardless of where they're manufactured.
Okay, so it makes it easier for builders
It does.
to choose materials and
Yes.
make sure they're getting a consistent level of quality.
Exactly. It streamlines the process and helps ensure a higher standard across the board.
All right, now let's get down to the basics.
Literally.
Literally foundations.
Foundations, the most important part.
So what are some key takeaways from this handbook about foundations?
Well, the handbook emphasizes that foundations are all about transferring the load of the building to the ground.
Okay.
It talks a lot about soil reaction,
Look.
which is basically the ground's ability to push back against the weight of the building.
So it's kind of like a wrestling match
Exactly.
between the building and the ground.
It is.
Oh,
And the type of soil plays a major role in determining what type of foundation you need.
makes sense. You wouldn't build a skyscraper
Right.
on sandy soil.
Probably not a good idea.
Yeah.
No, and the book highlights the importance of understanding the different types of pressure that foundations have to withstand,
Okay.
like dead loads,
Okay.
which are the weight of the building itself,
Okay.
live loads,
Okay.
which are the weight of everything that's added after construction, and then environmental loads like wind and snow.
So a lot to consider.
It is. A lot of factors go into foundation design.
And then they throw in a curveball here.
Yeah.
Building near trees.
Ah, yes, trees.
Why are trees an issue?
Well, trees, especially mature ones with extensive root systems,
Okay.
they can cause all sorts of problems for foundations.
Oh, really?
Their roots can grow under a building and cause something called ground heave,
Okay.
which is basically when the soil expands and puts upward pressure on the foundation.
So you could end up with cracks.
Yes, cracks, uneven floors, even structural damage.
Not a good look.
Not at all.
So what do you do?
Well, the handbook provides some solutions for
Sure.
dealing with trees,
Okay.
like deep foundations
Okay.
that extend below the root zone,
Okay.
or flexible construction techniques that can accommodate some movement.
So you got to outsmart those trees.
You do. You have to work with nature, not against it,
Yeah, yeah.
in this case.
And they also talk about foundation defects. What are some of the things that can go wrong?
Poor soil conditions are a big one.
Okay.
If the soil isn't properly compacted or drained,
Okay.
then it can lead to settling and cracks.
Okay.
Then there's improper construction, like using the wrong materials or not building the foundation to the correct depth.
So it's a combination of nature and
Often.
human error
It is.
that can lead to foundation problems.
Absolutely.
And the consequences can be both structural,
Yes.
affecting the stability of the building,
Right.
but also aesthetic.
Yes. It can impact the overall look and feel of the house.
You get like uneven floors, doors that stick.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cracks in the walls. It's not just about safety.
Right.
It's about the quality of the build.
And speaking of building,
Yes.
we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
but we're just getting started.
We're just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
There's a whole world of construction techniques and challenges waiting to be explored.
All right, so join us next time as we delve deeper into the nuts and bolts of actually putting a building together.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. Welcome back to the deep dive. Last time we covered a lot of the groundwork, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
Now it's time to dig into the actual process of constructing a building.
And this handbook goes into great detail about those techniques and the challenges you might face.
Perfect, because I'm ready to get my hands dirty,
Oh, right.
at least metaphorically.
Yeah.
The first thing that pops up is site analysis.
Yeah.
What exactly is involved in that?
Site analysis is all about understanding the unique characteristics of your building site before you even think about design.
So figuring out the lay of the land, the type of soil, any potential obstacles.
Precisely. The handbook lists a whole bunch of factors to consider.
Mm-hmm.
Topography, drainage, access routes, proximity to utilities,
Okay.
even whether the site is located in a conservation area. It's about seeing the big picture and anticipating any potential issues early on.
Okay, so it sounds like a lot of detective work.
It is, yeah. It's about gathering all the information you need before you start digging.
And speaking of digging deeper, the handbook emphasizes the importance of soil investigation.
Right.
What's the purpose of poking around in the dirt?
It's about knowing what you're building on, literally.
Oh, yes.
Soil investigation helps you understand the characteristics of the soil and determine if it's suitable for supporting a building.
Okay.
Different soil types have different load-bearing capacities.
Right.
So this step is crucial for ensuring the structural integrity of the building.
So you're not just assuming everything's fine beneath the surface.
No, not at all.
You're getting the data.
Yeah, you need to get the facts.
Okay.
The handbook talks about different methods for obtaining soil samples, like digging trial pits or drilling boreholes.
Okay.
And these samples are then sent to a lab to be analyzed.
To analyze what?
Things like moisture content, particle size distribution, and shear strength,
Okay.
which is basically how much weight the soil can handle before it starts to fail.
Right. So it's all about matching the foundation design to the actual conditions of the soil.
Precisely. You need to make sure the foundation can handle the load
Yeah.
and that the soil can support the foundation.
And what about the layout of the construction site itself?
Well, site layout involves planning how you'll use the space during construction.
Okay.
You need to consider things like access for deliveries, storage for materials,
Right.
and of course, ensuring the safety of everyone on site.
It's like choreographing a dance.
It is, yeah, a complex dance with lots of moving parts.
Okay.
And you need to make sure everything moves smoothly and safely.
And the handbook also mentions site security.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that so important?
Well, construction sites with all their valuable materials and equipment are prime targets for theft.
Oh.
So, securing the perimeter with fencing, having proper lighting, maybe even CCTV can deter potential thieves.
So it's about protecting your investment.
Exactly, and preventing delays
Right.
caused by stolen materials or vandalism.
Right. Okay. Now, what about materials testing?
Materials testing is important for ensuring the quality and suitability of the materials being used.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of sophisticated testing happens in a lab, but the handbook mentions a few simple tests
Like what kind of tests?
that can be carried out on site.
Okay.
One example is testing sand for bulking,
Okay.
which occurs when sand is damp.
Well.
Damp sand takes up more volume than dry sand, and this can affect the proportions of your concrete mix.
Oh, interesting.
So a simple test can help you adjust the mix
Right.
and maintain the right consistency.
So even seemingly simple materials like sand require attention to detail.
They do. Every material has its own quirks and characteristics.
The handbook then goes into setting out reduced level excavations,
Yes.
which sounds very technical.
It's not as complicated as it sounds.
Okay.
Basically, let's say you're digging a foundation and it needs to be at a specific depth below ground level. You'd use surveying tools like a theodolite and ranging rods to mark out the excavation area at the correct height.
Okay.
Then you set up site rails, which are horizontal boards placed at a known height, and use a traveler, which is a tool for measuring vertical distances to control the depth of the dig.
So it's all about precision, making sure you're digging to the exact depth.
Exactly. No guesswork allowed.
Specified in the plans.
It's all about accuracy.
Okay, and then there's leveling.
Yeah, leveling is the process of establishing height dimensions relative to a fixed point or datum. It's essential for ensuring that floors are level, walls are plumb.
Right, so no wonky floors.
No wonky floors.
Or doors that get stuck.
No doors getting stuck, everything nice and straight.
And this handbook even delves into road construction.
It does.
Specifically, rigid pavings.
Yes.
What are those?
Rigid pavings are basically concrete slabs laid over a base course of crushed stone.
Okay.
They're commonly used for roads, driveways, and other areas that need a hard-wearing, durable surface.
So it's not just about the buildings themselves, but the infrastructure around them.
Exactly. It's all part of creating a functional and well-built environment.
And what are some of the challenges involved in constructing rigid pavings?
One challenge is managing the expansion and contraction of concrete due to temperature changes.
Oh, right.
The handbook talks about incorporating joints into the paving,
Okay.
like longitudinal joints that run along the length of the road
Okay.
and transverse joints that go across it.
Okay.
These joints allow the concrete to expand and contract without cracking or distorting.
So it's like giving the concrete room to breathe.
Exactly, accommodating those natural movements.
Okay, now the next topic is shoring.
Mm-hmm.
I have a vague idea that it involves supporting structures.
That's right. Shoring is all about providing temporary support to structures during construction or renovation.
Okay.
Let's say you're excavating for a basement or removing a load-bearing wall.
Okay.
Shoring helps prevent collapses and ensures the safety of workers.
So if you're taking away something that's holding the building up, you need to put something else in its place temporarily.
Exactly. You need to provide that support.
What are some different types of shoring?
The handbook mentions a few. Raking shores, which are angled supports that lean against the structure.
Okay.
Flying shores, which span across open spaces.
Okay.
And dead shores, which go directly under a structural element to support it vertically.
Okay, so the type of shoring depends on...
It depends on the specific situation and the loads involved.
Okay.
You need to choose the right type of shoring to provide adequate support.
And then we have demolition.
Demolition, the exciting part.
Yeah, which always sounds a bit exciting.
It can be.
But I imagine it's a lot more complex.
Oh, it is. It's a highly regulated process with strict safety procedures.
So before you even start...
Yeah, before you even think about swinging a wrecking ball,
I would have to.
you need to notify utility providers and adjoining building owners.
Right. So you don't accidentally...
Exactly. You don't want to cut off the power to the neighborhood.
Right. Or bring down your neighbor's wall.
No. You need to make sure everything is safe and secure before you start demolition.
What else does the handbook highlight about demolition?
It talks about the regulations regarding debris disposal
Okay.
and protecting adjacent structures,
Yeah.
especially when party walls are involved.
Oh, okay.
And it mentions two key pieces of legislation.
Okay.
The Public Health Act, which gives local authorities the power to issue demolition orders if a building is considered dangerous.
Okay.
And the Health and Safety in the Work, etc. Act, which covers the safety of everyone involved in the demolition process.
So lots of rules,
Mhm.
but all for a good reason.
Exactly. It's all about making demolition as safe and controlled as possible.
Now let's move on to the heavy hitters of construction. Builder's plant.
Ah, yes, the big toys.
Yeah, what's the scoop on that?
Builder's plant is just a fancy term for all the heavy equipment used in construction.
Okay.
Think excavators, bulldozers, cranes, concrete mixers.
Right, now we're talking.
The real muscle.
What are some key factors to consider when choosing the right equipment for a project?
Well, it depends on the specific tasks you need to perform, the scale of the project, and the site conditions.
Okay.
For example, the type of soil can influence the choice of excavator,
Right.
while the height and reach requirements will dictate the type of crane you need.
You wouldn't use like a tiny excavator
Right.
to dig a foundation for a skyscraper.
No, not the best tool for the job.
The handbook also talks about the economics of builder's plant.
It does.
Right.
It compares the pros and cons of buying versus hiring equipment,
Yeah.
which is a big decision for any construction company.
Right.
Buying gives you ownership and flexibility, but it's a significant upfront investment.
Yeah.
Hiring is more cost-effective for short-term projects,
Okay.
but you have ongoing rental fees.
Right. So it's kind of a classic business decision, weighing those costs and benefits.
Exactly. Each option has its advantages and disadvantages.
And then the handbook goes into a rundown of different types of excavators.
There are quite a few.
Really?
Yeah.
What are some of the key ones?
The book focuses on three main types: back actors, drag lines, and tractor shovels.
Okay.
Back actors are the most common, with an arm that digs backward toward the machine.
Okay.
They're great for trenches and foundations.
Right.
Drag lines have a long boom and a bucket that drags along the ground, making them suitable for larger excavations.
Okay.
And tractor shovels, also known as front-end loaders,
Okay.
are versatile machines with a front bucket for digging, loading, and carrying materials.
So different tools for different jobs.
Precisely. Each one has its strengths and limitations.
Okay. And what about transport vehicles?
Transport vehicles are essential for getting materials and equipment to and from the site.
Right, that makes sense.
The handbook covers a range of vehicles from small vans for carrying tools and supplies
Okay.
to large articulated lorries for hauling heavy materials like bricks and concrete blocks.
Right.
Choosing the right vehicle depends on the load capacity, the distance, and the accessibility of the site.
It's a logistical puzzle.
It is, yeah, making sure everything gets where it needs to be
Yeah.
when it needs to be there.
And then we come to the heavy lifters, the cranes.
Ah, yes, the giants of the construction world.
Yeah, I've always been fascinated by those tower cranes
They are impressive.
that you see on skyscrapers.
They are, and the handbook covers a variety of crane types.
Really? I mean, I've seen the big tower cranes.
Yeah, those are stationary cranes,
Okay.
but there are also mobile cranes, traveling cranes that move along rails,
Wow.
even climbing cranes that are lifted up as the building grows taller.
So there's a crane for every,
Every height and every purpose.
and I imagine choosing the right crane is crucial for safety and efficiency.
Absolutely. The handbook highlights the importance of considering the crane's lifting capacity,
Okay.
reach, and stability.
Okay.
And operating a crane is a specialized skill.
Right. So no just hopping in and...
No, not at all. It requires proper training and certification.
Okay, now the handbook moves on to concreting plant.
Concreting plant encompasses all the equipment used to make and pour concrete.
Okay, so it's like a concrete factory on wheels.
Not quite, but it does include concrete mixers, concrete pumps,
Mm-hmm.
vibrators for compacting the concrete, everything needed to get that liquid stone where it needs to be.
And I imagine there are different types of concrete mixers depending on the scale of the project.
You're right. The book talks about small batch mixers,
Okay.
which are great for smaller projects,
Okay.
and large capacity mixers, which are used for larger volumes and often paired with concrete pumps to move the concrete horizontally or vertically.
Okay.
The choice of mixing and placing method depends on the project's size, the type of concrete being used, and the accessibility of the site.
It's like baking a cake versus running a commercial bakery.
Exactly. Different scales require different equipment and processes.
What about finishing concrete surfaces?
Finishing is about both functionality and aesthetics.
Okay.
It involves leveling, smoothing, and texturing the concrete after it's been poured. And there are various tools for this, like screeds, floats, and trowels,
Okay.
each creating a different effect.
So you can have a smooth, polished concrete floor
Mm-hmm.
in a modern apartment,
Right.
or a rougher texture for a driveway or a patio.
Exactly. The choice of finish depends on the intended use of the surface and the desired look.
Now that brings us to, I think, like the really exciting part.
Yes.
Internal construction and finishes.
This is where we really start to see the building come to life.
Yeah, this is where we transform that concrete shell into a habitable space.
Absolutely. And this handbook is packed with information about the different materials and techniques
Okay.
used to create walls, floors, ceilings, and all the other elements that make up a functional and aesthetically pleasing interior.
I'm ready to get into the details.
All right, let's do it.
So let's start with internal walls and partitions.
Okay.
What are some key considerations there?
The handbook covers a range of materials and construction methods, from traditional brick walls to modern stud walls framed with timber or metal. It also highlights the importance of fire protection,
Okay.
especially for party walls that separate adjoining properties.
Right.
Those walls usually have higher fire resistance requirements.
Makes sense. You don't want a fire
Right.
in one apartment
Exactly.
to spread to the next.
No, you want to contain it as much as possible.
And what about plasterboard? That seems to be...
Plasterboard, also known as drywall, is a versatile and cost-effective material.
Yeah, you see it everywhere.
You do. It's easy to work with, and it can be used for a variety of applications.
And the handbook mentions different types of plasterboard.
It does. There are moisture-resistant boards for bathrooms and kitchens,
Okay.
and fire-resistant boards for areas where fire safety is a concern.
So choosing the right type of plasterboard is key.
It is, yeah, you need to consider the environment where it's being used.
And what about wall tiling?
Wall tiling is popular for bathrooms, kitchens, and other areas that need a water-resistant, durable surface.
Yeah, makes sense.
The book discusses different types of tiles, adhesives, and grouts.
Emphasizing the importance of using the right materials for the job.
So there's a whole science to tiling.
There is, yeah. It's not just about sticking tiles on a wall.
Okay, now let's move on to floors.
Okay.
What are some of the options?
The book starts with domestic floor finishes,
Okay.
covering everything from carpets and tiles to wood flooring and laminate.
Okay.
It describes the characteristics of each material,
Okay.
highlighting factors like durability, ease of cleaning, and suitability for different areas of the house.
So you wouldn't necessarily put carpet in a bathroom
Probably not the best choice.
or hardwood in a high traffic area.
Right, you need to consider the wear and tear
Okay.
and choose a material that can handle it.
And the handbook also delves into the structural aspects of floors.
It does. It starts with large cast in situ ground floors,
Okay.
which are basically concrete slabs poured directly on the ground.
Okay.
Then it talks about concrete floor screeds,
Okay.
which are thin layers of concrete that are laid over the structural floor.
To create a smooth, level surface for the final floor finish.
So the screed is like a foundation for the final flooring material.
Exactly. It provides a stable and level base.
What about suspended floors?
Suspended floors are floors that are raised above the ground,
Okay.
supported by beams and joists.
Okay.
The book talks about timber suspended floors,
Okay.
which are common in residential construction,
Okay.
and reinforced concrete suspended floors, which are often used in larger buildings or where fire resistance is a concern.
So different materials, different construction methods,
Right.
but the same goal, creating a stable and level surface.
Exactly. You need a solid foundation for everything else.
So what about sound insulation in floors?
That's especially important in multi-unit dwellings.
Yeah, because
You don't want to hear your neighbor's every move.
nobody wants to hear their upstairs neighbors clomping around.
Exactly. The handbook explains the building regulations regarding sound transmission and describes different techniques for reducing noise transfer between floors, like using sound-absorbing insulation and resilient underlays.
Okay, so it's about dampening the sound.
It is, yeah, creating a barrier between the floors.
Speaking of things that go up and down, the handbook also covers stairs.
Stairs, another essential element.
Yeah, what are some key considerations there?
The book covers different types of stairs, materials, and construction methods,
Okay.
emphasizing the importance of complying with building codes to ensure safety and accessibility.
Right, you don't want to build a staircase.
No, you don't want it to be too steep or too narrow.
That's like climbing Mount Everest.
Exactly. It needs to be comfortable and safe to use.
Okay, what about internal doors?
The book covers various door types, frames, and door sets,
Okay.
which are pre-assembled doors and frames.
Okay.
It also highlights the importance of fire-resisting doors in certain areas, like between a house and an attached garage.
Right, so that would be...
That door needs to be able to withstand a fire for a certain amount of time.
Right, it's like a firewall.
It is, yeah, preventing the spread of smoke and flames.
And then we have ceilings.
Ceilings, the often overlooked but important element.
What are some common ceiling types and materials?
Plasterboard ceilings are common, similar to plasterboard walls,
Okay.
but attached to the ceiling joists.
Oh.
The handbook also talks about suspended ceilings,
Okay.
which are ceilings that hang below the structural ceiling.
Okay.
They're often used in commercial buildings
Okay.
to conceal services like lighting, ventilation, and electrical wiring.
So it's like a hidden layer above the ceiling.
Exactly, concealing all the guts of the building.
And what about decorative aspects of ceilings?
The handbook mentions various finishes for ceilings, from simple paint to textured finishes,
Okay.
and even decorative ceiling tiles. It's all about creating the desired aesthetic.
Right. And speaking of aesthetics, we can't forget about paint.
Ah, yes, paint, the final touch.
What does the handbook say about paint?
It delves into different types of paints, application methods, and surface preparation.
Okay.
It emphasizes the importance of choosing the right type of paint for the specific surface and environment.
Right. So like you wouldn't use the same paint.
Exactly. You wouldn't use the same paint for your exterior walls as you would for your bathroom.
Right. Because nobody wants peeling paint in their shower.
No, nobody wants that.
And then there's joinery.
Joinery, the art of working with wood.
Yeah, I always think of it as the more artistic side of construction.
It is. It involves crafting doors, windows, staircases, and other elements from wood.
And the handbook mentions different types of wood commonly used.
It does, each with its own unique properties and characteristics.
Like oak.
Oak is known for its strength and durability,
Right, okay.
while pine is more affordable and versatile.
So choosing the right wood depends on.
It depends on the application and the desired look.
Okay. And what about those engineered wood products?
The book refers to them as composite boarding and sheet materials,
Okay.
which are basically engineered wood products made from wood fibers, particles, or veneers.
So plywood, chipboard.
Exactly, MDF, those kinds of materials.
So they're like wood,
They are wood-based.
But better in some
In
ways.
some ways, yes.
How so?
They're often more stable,
Okay.
less prone to warping or splitting,
Okay.
and can be manufactured in larger sizes than solid wood.
So it's all about choosing the right material for the job.
It is, yeah, whether it's solid wood or an engineered product.
And this handbook even talks about plastics in construction.
Plastics have become increasingly popular in construction.
Really? Because I wouldn't think of plastic.
It might not be traditional,
That's
but
a building material?
it's very versatile,
Okay.
durable, and resistant to moisture and rot.
Okay.
The book lists a bunch of examples like plastic pipes,
Okay.
insulation, windows, even doors.
Wow. So plastic is...
It's finding its way into all sorts of unexpected places
Yeah.
in the construction world.
And to wrap things up, the book covers sealants.
Sealants,
Yeah.
the unsung heroes of construction.
Why are they so important?
Sealants are those flexible materials used to fill gaps in joints,
Okay.
preventing air and water leaks.
Okay.
Think silicone, sealant, caulking, those kinds of products.
So they're like the glue that holds everything together.
In a way, yes, ensuring a tight seal.
And the book emphasizes choosing the right sealant.
It does, yeah. You need to consider the materials being sealed, the exposure to weather,
Okay.
and the desired aesthetic.
So using the wrong sealant can...
It can lead to leaks, cracks, and other problems down the road.
So it's a small detail that could have a big impact.
It can, yeah, on the longevity and performance of a building.
And that brings us to the final chapter of our construction journey. Building services.
Ah, yes, the systems that bring the building to life.
Yeah, the water, the electricity, the gas.
All the essential services.
I'm ready to explore the inner workings.
Let's dive in.
Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into construction.
Yeah.
We've covered the structure, the materials, the techniques.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's time to look at the essential services.
Yeah, the things that make a building truly functional.
Right, like the water, electricity, all that good stuff.
Right, the lifeblood of a building, you could say.
Yeah, the systems that make it livable and comfortable.
Exactly, the things we often take for granted.
And this handbook really gets into like the nitty-gritty
It does.
of those systems.
Yeah, all the behind-the-scenes stuff.
And it starts with drainage, which I have to admit is not
the most glamorous topic.
not the most glamorous.
What's central?
But certainly essential.
Absolutely.
So let's talk pipes.
All right, let's dive in.
The handbook mentions different types of drainage layouts.
Yeah, so one distinction is between combined systems,
Okay.
where foul water and surface water are carried away in the same pipes.
Okay, so foul water is...
Wastewater from toilets and sinks.
Okay.
And surface water is from rain and runoff.
Okay.
And then there are separate systems
Right.
where those two types of water are kept separate.
So which is better?
It really depends on local regulations, the age of the existing infrastructure,
Okay.
and the capacity of the sewer system.
So not a one-size-fits-all?
Not at all. Each situation is unique.
The book also mentions things like inspection chambers
Yeah.
and manholes.
Those are the access points you
Right.
see in the ground.
Yeah.
Inspection chambers allow you to access the drains
Okay.
for maintenance and repairs,
Okay.
while manholes are larger access points for deeper drains.
So you don't have to dig up your whole yard
Exactly.
if there's a blockage.
No, you just access the system through those points.
Right.
And the handbook emphasizes the importance of positioning these access points strategically.
So they need to be accessible
Right.
and in accordance with building regulations.
Absolutely. There are rules about where they can be located.
What about drain laying, like the actual process?
Drain laying involves digging trenches and laying the pipes at the correct gradient.
Okay.
To ensure proper flow, gravity does most of the work, carrying the wastewater away to the sewer system.
So it's all about creating a downward path.
Exactly. You need to make sure the water flows in the right direction.
Okay, now the book also mentions different types of joints used in drainage systems.
Yeah, so joints connect the pipes,
Okay.
and there are rigid joints, which are fixed in place,
Okay.
and flexible joints, which allow for some movement.
Okay, why is that important?
Because ground conditions can change over time, causing the pipes to shift slightly.
Oh.
Flexible joints can accommodate those movements without causing leaks.
So it's about building in some flexibility.
It is, yeah. You need to anticipate those changes.
And speaking of things that shouldn't shift,
Yeah,
the handbook really emphasizes water tightness in drainage systems.
absolutely. Leaks can lead to contamination
Okay.
of the surrounding soil and groundwater.
Right, you don't want leaky pipes
No, you want to keep everything contained.
seeping into your garden.
Exactly. The handbook talks about testing the system for leaks.
Okay.
Both during and after installation.
To make sure everything's sealed up tight.
Right. No leaks allowed.
Okay, so let's move on to something a little more appealing. Hot water installations.
Ah, yes, hot water, a modern necessity.
Right, and this handbook goes into the different systems
It does.
used to provide hot water to a building.
Yeah, there are a few different approaches.
And it starts with like the classic system, the direct system.
The direct system, yeah, with a hot water cylinder.
I think of those as the big tanks you see.
Exactly, the big tanks in older houses.
Yeah.
In a direct system, the water is heated directly by a boiler and stored in a hot water cylinder.
So it's like having a reservoir.
It is, yeah, a reservoir of hot water ready to go.
And then there are indirect systems.
Indirect systems are more common in newer homes.
Okay, so that's the difference.
In an indirect system, the water is heated indirectly
Okay.
by a heat exchanger
Okay.
that's connected to the boiler.
That was more efficient.
It is. It uses the same heat source for both space heating and hot water.
Yeah, it's like a 2-for-1 deal.
Exactly. You get more bang for your buck.
And then the book also mentions mains-fed indirect systems.
Ah, yes, the more modern approach.
So those are the ones where the hot water is drawn.
Directly from the main supply
Okay.
and heated instantly
Right.
as it flows through a heat exchanger.
So it's like having an endless supply of hot water on demand.
It is. You never run out.
Okay, very nice.
And it's very efficient because you only heat the water you need when you need it.
Okay, now let's switch gears to another essential service. Electrical supply.
All right, the power that keeps everything running.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine life without electricity.
It is. We're so reliant on it.
And this handbook really breaks down the complexities of getting that power into a building.
It starts with the entry and intake of electrical service, explaining the roles of both the electricity supply company and the consumer.
So the electricity company brings the power to the building.
Right. They're responsible for getting it to the property line.
Okay.
And the homeowner is responsible for everything from the meter onward.
And this handbook stresses the importance of having a safe
Absolutely.
electrical installation.
Yeah, it's crucial for preventing accidents and ensuring the longevity of the system.
Okay.
So the book talks about the role of circuit breakers and RCDs.
Which are
Those are safety devices that trip when there's a problem.
right, if you overload a circuit or
Exactly. They cut off the power instantly,
Yeah.
preventing shocks and fires.
so they're literally lifesavers.
They are. They can prevent serious injuries and damage.
And then the handbook goes into the different types of electrical circuits.
Right. So there are lighting circuits,
Okay.
ring main circuits,
Okay.
and radial circuits.
So it's like a network
It is a network of pathways
bringing
to
electricity
the different parts of the house.
for different purposes.
Exactly. Each circuit has its own function.
Okay, and the handbook emphasizes using the right type of wiring.
Absolutely. You need to use the correct type of wire
Good.
and make sure the wires can handle the load without overheating.
So no overloading those circuits.
No, that can lead to fires.
Okay, and speaking of potential hazards, this handbook also covers gas supply.
Ah, yes, gas, another essential service.
It's very useful.
It is, but it can also be dangerous if not handled properly.
Right, so what does this handbook say about gas safety?
It stresses the importance of having a qualified gas-safe registered engineer
Okay.
install and maintain your gas system.
Okay, so no DIY gas projects.
No, it's not worth the risk.
Right.
It also talks about the importance of regular gas safety checks
Okay.
to detect any potential issues.
So being proactive.
Exactly, ensuring the system is safe and functioning correctly.
All right, now to wrap things up, this handbook covers a topic that's both practical and kind of romantic. Open fireplaces and flues.
Ah, the classic fireplace.
Yeah, a symbol of warmth and coziness.
Exactly, but there's more to it than meets the eye.
So let's talk about flues.
Okay, a flue is basically a channel that carries smoke and combustion gases
Okay.
from the fireplace up and out of the building.
So it's essential for safety.
It is. It prevents those gases from building up inside
Right, okay.
and causing carbon monoxide poisoning.
So no smoky rooms or chimney fires?
No, the flue takes care of all that.
And the book talks about different types of flues?
Yeah, there are traditional brick chimneys and more modern metal flues.
Okay.
The choice depends on the type of fireplace, the fuel being used, and the structure of the building.
And this handbook also talks about fire safety.
It does. It emphasizes the need for fire guards
Okay.
and keeping flammable materials away from the fireplace.
Okay.
So it's about enjoying the warmth and ambience of a fire safely and responsibly.
Right, fire is great,
It is.
but you got to respect it.
Absolutely.
Well, that brings us to the end of our construction deep dive.
We've covered a lot.
Yeah, we have, from the foundation to the roof.
From the ground up.
From the ground up, yeah.
We've explored the materials, the techniques, the regulations.
The challenges, the safety measures.
It's been a fascinating journey.
I feel like I could build a house now.
Maybe not quite.
Maybe not quite.
But you definitely have a much deeper understanding
I do.
of what goes into it.
Yeah, of the complexity and the craftsmanship.
It's a testament to human ingenuity and skill,
Yeah.
taking raw materials and transforming them into these functional and beautiful spaces.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, I think we'll wrap things up.
All right.
Join us next time for another deep dive into a fascinating topic. Until then, stay curious and keep building your knowledge.
Sounds good.